Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about all the issues that affect our business that help us to improve the customer experience because it always has been, is now, and always will be about the customer experience. And as the title says, technicians, a look under the hood. We know the MPI is a multi-point inspection. How we better serve the customers with using the multi-point inspection. But the part we forget about are the employees, the technicians in particular, who have very stressful jobs. And, we're already in a situation where there's a massive shortage of technicians, always has been, and it's not looking to get any better anytime soon, given the few number of students that are coming out of tech school now. So it's a crazy situation that we're going to dig into a little bit here. But before we do, I want to introduce you to Joshua Taylor. He's a friend of mine, a colleague, and somebody who spent quite a bit of time having conversations with technicians and really digging deep to see what some of the issues are that they face that on the surface, we don't even know, because we don't experience it. And after Joshua introduces himself, I'm going to go into a little story and then we'll get started. So Joshua, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Paul, thank you very much again for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity again to try and spread some awareness for our technicians out there. I'm easy, 20 plus years in the trade, licensed technician here in Canada. I've got my red seal. I'm currently working for a power sports store. I've been in the big chair, GM at a collision center. I've been in the other big chair, fixed ops manager at a Mitsu store. I've got 15 solid years on the bench on several different brands, and hopefully going forward, helping as many technicians as possible, being happy, healthier, and more productive in the service shop.
Wow. So I want to relay a story because this is an important one, and it really hit home for me. And I think this will illustrate the point to most of you out there that really aren't aware of all the things that go on. I bring up this story. I brought it up a couple of times, but again, it really hits home because you wouldn't think it, right? Perception is reality. And I remember I went into a store and I was there to assess the crew. Objectively, I didn't work for the group. So I can go in, I could meet the individuals, and I can kind of size up what's going on. Before I met with anybody, I was kind of given pointers on, okay, this is how this person is, this is how the other person is, and that one there, don't expect to get too much cooperation out of him because, we're not even sure we're going to keep him because he's been trouble. All right. Well, I don't let anything taint my view. I figured, let me just have my own conversations and see what they're about. So I met all of the staff, a lot of the technicians, a lot of the service advisors. And it's funny, the person that I was told was going to be the most trouble, that wouldn't look me in the eye, that had trouble dealing with women customers who wouldn't respond and engage. By the end of the day, we were having deep, meaningful conversations, and that person was engaging, right? It turned out there were some things in that person's past that dictated how he performed in his job. He had undergone a divorce, and in that divorce lost a repair shop, an aftermarket repair shop that he owned. And he and I kind of shared stories about the aftermarket repair shops and some of the experiences that we both had in different places. And I was able to communicate with that person on their level, and he engaged back, was thoughtful in conversation in the responses. So the problem wasn't necessarily with that person. The problem was with management not taking the time to understand all of their employees. We all walk by and we wave and we say hi to the techs, we say hi to the advisors, and we keep walking. But how much do we really know about them, right? their struggles, the problems that they face, and what they wake up to every day. And Joshua, you've had some really heart-wrenching conversations. So let's get started.
Well, I have, to be honest. I'm closing in on 75 one-to-ones with technicians over the last year. And I'll give you a fairly simple example. I had two of them last night. And I'll use one specific example from one of those that almost acutely identifies what you're describing. This young gentleman's got 2 years in the trade. He's working at an independent shop. He's in a busy-ish area from what I understand of my own analysis of the area. I asked three fairly simple questions. How much are you making an hour? / are you hourly flat rate? How big is the shop? And what's your training like? And by his answers, I was able to tell him what the service manager is like, what the other techs were like, what the shop is like, whether it's busy or not, what the area is like, and what he's working on. And I pinned it down almost to a complete T with 3 or 4 basic pieces of information that had nothing to do with the holistic answer. His answer is, after 2 years, I'm not getting the training. Ask and ask and ask and ask and ask. And we got a young individual, roughly, we'll say between 20 and 25, asking and asking and asking for training, not getting it. They're asking and asking and asking about, okay, what else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? This individual is telling me they're asking for more work because they're walking around pushing a broom. No 2-year tech, especially 2 years in, should be pushing a broom, not having work. So now we got a problem that leadership's not getting the marketing right. Leadership's not getting the people and customers into the bays right. They're not doing anything of that nature. Well, it means we've got a communication on a whole that's breaking down. You've got a technician at the top rung that's supposed to be the lead tech, teaching him, refuses, won't let him watch over shoulder, let alone be part of the learning process. We've got other senior techs in the shop that will only allow him to help when it's gravy jobs so they can double up on their money. And this poor, we'll call it poor because he's making below the wage he should be just for the cost of living. And he has no bonuses, no tool bonuses, no incentives in any way, shape, or form. And he's been told by his boss that he's a problem. He literally not, I will use the phrase, he's a problem child. So if individual wants training, won't get it, is getting less than the cost of living to be there, isn't getting any tool allowances of any description, and he's the problem child. So conversely, I've had the opposite conversations one-to-one, where this particular gentleman was getting almost $40 an hour flat rate, was making 120, 130% productivity on his hours, and was wanting that his service manager wasn't giving him enough. Okay, well, what are you doing to give back to the team? Well, what do you mean? Well, you told me that there's 19 other technicians in your shop. What are you doing to help the rest of the team? Well, I go in, I work, and I go home. Well, do you help your bay mates? Well, no. I need to make my hours. Do you help the young techs who are learning in the trade? Do you go and help them every once in a while? Well, no, I got to make my hours. Well, why, as a person who's been in the trade for 20 plus years, are you not teaching or helping or mentoring or being a good teammate for the rest of the shop? Well, I got to make my hours. Well, if you're looking for more, if you're looking for more hours and more responsibility from your service manager, it would be in your best interest to be a team player to show that you can take on more responsibility, take ownership for your own action. So we have both ends of the spectrum. We have techs who are greedy, who aren't willing to put in the work. We have young techs who don't have the experience that want to learn. And we have everything in between. It's the communication and having leadership and mechanics talk.
So
I think that's really your point, right?
So what we've got is we've got a group of people, men and women, who are undergoing stress, anxiety. That cost us. I think the stats you gave me were It costs $42 billion a year, largely due in lost productivity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a huge number.
That's a gigantic number. And if you think from a pure statistics standpoint that a service manager is going to look at, we've got lots of service managers, I think, here in the chat, back and forth here. Point one, we don't win or lose on the big ones, right? It's not the big things that we truly lose on. Yes, we're going to take a kick in the pants. You know, if you take 10 hours on an engine job and it pays 7.5, that's not the one that's going to happen regularly, because the service manager is going to go in and look, well, why did we only get 2.5? Why did we get 2.5 hours less in your time? Like, is there some process that we can help you with? Whatever. But that's not the one that the technicians are going to lose on. They're going to lose on the point ones, the point twos. Where's the point ones and point twos come in? Well, their apprehension to start that 10-hour job, the apprehension to take on a job they've never done, the apprehension of working on a brand or a product or a car they've never worked on, the apprehension anxiety that comes with working on, let's say they got a brand new RTR Mustang, you know, $120,000, $130,000 Mustang, and the only thing they've ever worked on is little Ford Transit vans. It's one thing to work on a $20,000, $30,000 car. It's a completely different story when they start rolling that 6-7 digit number. Like, there's a big difference. And when you start getting brands like GM and Ford and Dodge, and they've got 100, 120, 130, 140, $150,000 trucks that they got to work on, you scratch a door on a $150,000 truck, that's a $2,000 touch. Like, that's anxiety that happens. And when you've got to diagnose a window switch because it doesn't go up and down, you got to take a door panel off. That door panel might be $1,200. 6 minutes, 0.1. It's like,
that's crazy.
I gotta take this off. How do I do it? How do I do it? And it's 6 minutes of thinking about how to do it instead of just doing it. You've got years under your belt. You've got the experience and the confidence to do it. Just do it. And for some, that is a lot harder to overcome than others. I still struggle with it. I get a job or like I work on a side-by-side, and it's hard to comprehend on brand new side-by-sides, but a brand new Razor Turbo is like a $60,000 side-by-side. Like the decals on one door is $500. Like it takes nothing to scratch a decal. Now you're putting a whole new decal sheet on. So you got to think about it, but you got to realize you got to think about it, not worry about it.
Right.
Think about it. Next step, do the job. And overcoming that anxiety, overcoming that fear, that's where that $42 billion comes in from.
Now that's going to lead to other problems, right? For the techs, habitual drinking.
100%. So there's lots of information out there about drinking now that's kind of changing mindsets. We get Dr. Huberman at Huberman Labs I'm listening to, and thankfully I've had several people recommend listening to him and getting more context and more in depth into the chemistry of how anxiety works and how it works in relation to what we do as mechanics every day. Drinking, from statistics that they've brought up through chemistry, 14 drinks a week, 2 a day. That could be 2 a day. That could be 1 a day for 5 days, and then the latter on Saturday night. So the average is 14. 14 or more, you're starting to develop cortisol levels in your body that affect your levels of stress. Cortisol is the hormone in your body for stress. The more that your base level of that is, the more susceptible you are to stress levels that are higher, which means that when you start in the morning, even if you haven't had a drink for several days, if you've had 14 over the last week, your levels of stress are higher just walking into work. So I bring up the example that I brought up to a psychologist about 2 or 3 weeks ago. If they're walking into work as a mechanic and they open the door on Monday morning and at 7 o'clock in the morning, if their shift starts, and at 7:01 they see their service manager standing in their bay as they're walking in. There are only 5 reasons that a service manager is standing in your bay. You did really great, really great last week, and they want to congratulate you in some way, shape, or form. And it has to be great, or it's bad, very bad, fired, or sued. So they got a 20% chance that it's not bad. The other 4 bad, very bad, fired or sued. Instantaneous anxiety and stress. So if they've had drinks over the last 2 weeks, even as little as 14, under 14 over the last week, they're already higher than those who aren't drinking. And we're not talking about chronic drinking. We're not talking like 3, 4, 5 a case a night. We're talking 14 or less drinks a week.
Well, that's enough to affect your sleep levels.
Correct.
That's enough to affect your brain function.
Correct.
Oh, and I want to just make a comment here. Normally, we've changed the format of the show a bit from an hour to 30 minutes, and we may go over a little bit. So we're not able to respond to as many as, the hellos as in the past, but certainly any questions, by all means, definitely ask, because these are important topics, and we want to give you as much information within that short period of time as possible, and just kind of focus on the content. So I just wanted to put that out there. Let me just see here. Make sure there's no questions that we missed.
Oh, chat is full.
The chat is
full. Jerry, maple syrup. Jerry, come on. Come on now.
Treat it like a number. So we've got this. We've got the stress. We've got the anxiety. We've got the diminished brain function, and that leads to turnover.
Mm-hmm.
How often do technicians turn over?
Right now, the statistics are between 18 and 24 months. A technician is changing jobs. 53% of technicians are changing jobs every 18 to 24 months. Period.
Half your crew in less than 2 years is
half. Gone. More than half now. And now you have consistent. You've got breakdowns, and I broke down a little while back what an ideal tree is of like the 0 to 2 year tech, the 3 to 5, and so on down as you go down the experience tree to try and have, because very few shops are going to be able to afford, if you have 10 technician bays, you're not going to be able to afford necessarily to have 10 25-year techs in there. That's right. Unreasonable that from, your gross profit percentage, because you don't want to have a $35, $45, $55 an hour tech doing oil changes. That's silly. You need to have a combination in ranges. You need to have brand new green guys doing oil changes or barely doing oil changes, just doing inspections with another tech. You need to have someone doing oil changes and inspections and basic repairs that they can do. You need to have line work. They need to be able to do middle to harder level repairs. And you need to have techs in there that can do anything. And you need to have a tech that can do anything and diagnose it all. So that stacking tree comes into play.
Now, the other piece that we need to think about is that on average, the techs are older across the board. So we're going to have a number of techs leaving the field. The average tech is what, over 40?
Over 40. The average tech is 41, male and white currently. A very, very high percentage. We got somewhere just below 97% of technicians are male. 65% of them are white, and the average is 41. Not 25, not 30, not 35, 41. So you've got a tech who's been in the industry on average of 13 years. Okay. And most of the data so far that I have in that I've recovered from the Wrenchers Wellness Survey is that techs are stopping around the 16-year mark. They are dropping like flies. So we are not having 25 plus in spades anymore. It's not even close. We're at the roughly 13 to 16-year mark where they're starting to drop off. And that's getting harder now, like I said earlier on. I don't remember what I said, that on camera or off camera, but that 80-20% rule, that 80-20 rule really comes into play for technicians. They are not putting up with job hopping. They're not job hopping and job hopping and job hopping. They're doing it and then leaving. So if you use the 80-20 rule and they're changing jobs every 24 months, that's 8 years, 4 jobs. So on the 4th time they've job hopped, they found another poor leader that isn't talking to them, that isn't listening to them, that isn't giving them the tools, resources, and training they need to succeed. They're not going to number 5. They're out.
and that costs the store a lot of money. And
It's cost 4 stores a lot of money.
We've have so few technicians coming out of tech school today that we really can't afford to lose them that way. You know, how many? I don't know how many managers, how many leaders are there really that take the time to get to know all of their people and to help and mentor them. I posted a graphic the other day where good technicians aren't born, they're nurtured. You know, I don't know if you saw that one with the wrenches. And
I haven't yet. I have to look. I'll have to look for it.
The mama wrench is feeding the baby wrench the nuts.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a cool graphic I found online. I don't know who created it. It just kind of showed up. But yeah, if we don't take care of this problem and nip it in the bud, we're going to be seriously hurting. Now, interesting point was brought up about flat rate. How does flat rate contribute to the sanity of your technicians today?
I'm different than most. I like flat rate, but my caveat is it has to be enforced by a good leader. My number one rule across the board is the first and most important choice every mechanic has across the board is choosing a good leader. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there is one size fits all for great leadership. And I think Jerry's asking that, what is my definition of a true leader? You only need one really, really, really good skill to be a good leader, and that's listen. If you can listen, which means you're asking questions as well. If you can listen and then execute, you're a good leader. Many will listen and then not execute. Some will execute on their own goals, their own dreams, their own ambitions, instead of listening to the team around them. So to your question, can I define it perfectly? No.
I think flat rate's been around for so long. You know, the flat rate back in the day was a little different. We didn't have, $500 panels that we could easily scratch. So, we can't do things necessarily the way we've been doing them for decades in the business. Something's got to give. And, that seems to be a recurring theme. I hear a lot of people complain about flat rate. Yeah, I'm on one hand, I'm for it because it gives you the opportunity to make money if you're a better tech. But with all these stressors that are thrown into the mix, I don't agree necessarily that it's something that we have to stick with right now. We may want to look into a different level of compensation.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Every individual, regardless of industry, is going to look for different levels or different types of pay plans or remuneration, right? What one person enjoys, the next person may not. It's hard to think from a leadership standpoint. If you've got 50 techs on the shop floor, the last thing you want to do is have 50 different pay plans. But can you afford to not have 50 different pay plans when you're in a position where you need to have all 50 bays filled? It's interesting to think that it's a hard thing to do. I know it's a hard thing to do. I've had to do it. But it's interesting to think that it's what's harder? Having 50 different pay plans or only having 40 techs in the shop for 50? Which one's more costly? And I would think every service manager and fixed ops director that's in the chat right now is going to say it's far more costly to have 10 empty bays than it is to have 50 different pay plans. So again, I'm not against flat rate. I think a well-monitored and educated service manager monitoring flat rate systems with wages that are value-based, not subjective numbers, is far more important than simply going to straight time. Or, sorry, not straight time, Canadian, hourly.
Hourly plus some other sort of incentive.
Exactly, because
based on production.
Based on production, you've got two worlds. I don't believe that hourly is the answer. Hourly alone is not the answer. And I don't like the word guarantee. I think somebody said it in chat here that guarantee solves a lot of problems. I don't think it does. Especially when you use the phrase guarantee, you get a simple word that immediately elicits a response in most human beings that I got a guarantee I'm good. I don't have to work hard. No, that's not how this works. We expect you to produce. So it's language, communication, and so on and so forth that needs to be done per technician. Like you might be able, I'm pretty sure that Marshall Sheldon's in the chat right now. He's the kind of individual that likes to have his backside taken care of appropriately with a swift frozen boot if he needs it. But for the most part, he's not going to need it. You have other individuals like myself. I don't need it at all. I am the worst critic of myself when I have performed poorly. I do not need feedback. And in fact, it's worse if I get negative feedback because I am anxious when I get it and I will stew about it for 2 days. I have to work really hard for it to not affect my work because not only have I been hard on myself, somebody else is, whether they've been graciously about it, whether they've been empathetic about it, however they've communicated, even if they've communicated it perfectly, I'm still going to stew about it. And I'm not alone. I have technicians telling me regularly in one-to-one private conversations that they worry about their hours. Whether they're hourly or flat rate, they worry about their hours because they're worried about keeping their jobs. Even in this market, they're worried about their jobs.
Now, something that comes up a lot is you ask the question, what are you doing to help your teammates, right? Mm-hmm. Sentiment from a few people is that they don't get paid to do that. So why should they do it? And to add on to that is, I'm a huge proponent of process. Mm-hmm. I believe that if our process is one where we educate the customer as to the condition of their car, sell the green, whether it's good, going to need something soon, or it needs something right now, I believe all of that needs to be effectively communicated. And there are enough people that complain about the MPI. They feel that the MPI, they're giving their time for free. And there's no right answer in any conversation. But my feeling on that is that if we do a good job, if we diagnose 100% of the time, 100% of the customers, and present all of our findings and communicate it effectively 100% of the time, I think we'll be more successful in getting more work from the customer. And if we do that, we get paid for performing the work. If we don't effectively communicate our findings, or we pencil whip, the RO, mm-hmm. and we don't communicate that, we're not going to get the work. Mm-hmm. And in a case like that, sure, if I've done the inspection and I don't get paid, I volunteered my time. But I'm leaning more to the side of, if you do the work, you're more likely to get your job, and then you will get paid for it. What are your feelings on something like that? Because that's got to be stressful for a number of technicians.
Oh, yeah. I think most eloquently, to be honest, John Fraser put it perfectly. Teach the service drive to produce, and you don't have to worry about your technicians producing hours. That fundamentally solves 90% of the problem. The other 10% of the problem is making sure the techs have the tools and resources to get the work done in a productive manner. You're talking about clean shops, organized shops with all the tools, equipments, and products and services that they need to be able to produce well. Then it's last person. So people is your service advisors, process is your technicians, and then you have the small little bits at the end. It's the small 0.1s that you do over time. So little productivity hacks, like for technicians, this is huge. And I've implemented in shops as a leader. Paint the outline of the tool on the floor, everywhere, wherever it sits. So the AC machine, AC 1, 2, and 3, box it in with yellow tape or yellow paint. You will find that it goes back there every time. If you can prevent a technician spending 6 minutes looking for that AC machine 10 times a day, how much time are you going to save across the whole day, across the whole season that you're doing AC repairs? Now, if you're down in Texas, you're doing all the time. And I digress, not 4 months of the year like we are here in Canada, but the simple things of starting from the top down. Are you a good leader? No. Be a good leader. Do the next step. Teach your teams. You have two major teams to deal with. You have the sales team, which is your service advisors. You have the other sales team, which is your technicians. They need to find the work for the service advisors to sell. The sellers need to sell properly, eloquently, so that the customers keep coming back. If they're selling well, you go out to the shop. They're producing their hours. You have the ones that aren't producing well, you train them up. If you can't train them up, get them out.
Another stressor that's coming is that since the market's turning on the variable side of things, I hear a lot of rumblings from dealers, how they're going to cut costs, right? And a lot of these dealers are going to the service department and looking to see where they can trim the fat. But I hate to break it to you, but there's not a lot of fat in most service departments that are running, reasonably well. So that adds another layer of stress already onto the situation.
That's where I disagree, Paul. And I'll use this as an example. How many different subscription services do you pay for in a month?
I have them mapped out in an Excel spreadsheet.
Would it be safe to say that you probably have 5 to 10 subscriptions?
Easily.
How many Make Life Easy subscriptions do you think service managers have that the service ownership is paying for?
Probably not a lot.
Well, the two techs I talked to last night both provided me with information on 5 each that don't get used in the shop. Don't get used. So here's the thing. AJ in SDL this morning eloquently provided, I bet you 3 weeks after any tool, piece of product, piece of software, 3 weeks after an improper onboarding of that new tool software, you've got one of the most expensive paperweights or most expensive door stoppers in the business. There are more expensive door stoppers in the service department than just about any service department in the dealership, bar none, because they don't get implemented well, because typically those product suppliers vanish or have poor support systems, or the service manager was swindled into having some kind of newfangled something that there is no buy-in in the shop. Then they don't train the shop how to use that tool, or don't train the service advisor how to use those tools. And now you have a really expensive paperweight. So the trim the fat is being lean. You don't necessarily need to trim the fat. You just need to run lean your processes and sell, train your advisors to sell. However, whether it's video MPI, learning objection handling, but train them to sell so that the techs themselves can produce some work.
All right, but here's how I look at the tablet. Let's use that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
If a tablet's sitting there collecting dust, the fish thinks from the head, okay? Because that tablet has the ability to save everybody a lot of time, right? If you look at the amount of time that technicians waste in going to the parts counter, in talking about what they did on the weekend, and talking about what's happening on the upcoming weekend, okay? And all of these things, checking parts, all that takes time. Now, if a manager's not utilizing that tool, well, shame on that manager. That manager needs to be spoken to, and that manager needs to be brought back into alignment. Because let's face it, that's supposed to be a life-saving tool, all right? That tablet is something used to greet the customer in the service drive, in their car, where they're comfortable, where the information's laid out, where they're able to confirm what the customer's coming in for, where they're able to do the walk around, where they're able to note the condition, to not just minimize policy, but also to look at those things where most of us don't, we don't think about it because they're not money makers. The taillight bulb, the headlight bulb, the wipers, these aren't things that generate a lot of money, but they generate a lot of goodwill because the customer doesn't remember that they needed wipers for the last 6 months and it wasn't raining before they came in, but when they leave and it starts to rain, if you didn't check that, then it's your fault because my car was just in the shop. Why didn't you let me know? Not, oh, I've been driving for 6 months with this, knowing that it's bad, and then I forgot, so now I turned it into your fault. The time spent at the counter, that tablet should be able to, when they're properly using it, do your complete estimate right then and there. At the same time, checking to make sure all the parts are in stock that you need for that job. And if there's only one part and it's for Mrs. Jones, who's not coming in for 2 weeks, that gives you the ability to then use that part for this job and then reorder another part for Mrs. Jones. So that tablet, if it's not being used, somebody needs a stern talking to. So,
oh, of course, 100%. And there's so many other things that if you can't, here's a thing from both sides of the coin. If the techs see service advisors that have tablets that aren't being used, the phrase, there's no faster way to kill a shop than to reward those who are not doing their job. Well, there you have it. You have the shop isn't necessarily just a shop. You don't have to have a rewarding a poor technician to kill the shop. You can be rewarding a poor advisor and killing the shop. That's just as fast a way to kill the shop. If you got a $2,000 tablet in front of advisors and they aren't being used, my goodness, not just the missed opportunities because you're not doing the walk around properly with the customer. Forget about that. That tablet could be used in the shop as a diagnostic tool. That tablet could be used in the shop as a social media tool. That tablet in the shop could be done to do your video walkarounds or your video MPIs. 100. There are lots of ways that tablet could be used. And I can get into all kinds of stuff about how it could use for parts. Kaylee Philo and I went into this as well. If you're not checking in parts, the last thing you want is a technician to find a wrong part in a box. That should not happen. It should not happen. It's such a simple thing. To part comes in, open the box, look at the part. If it's supposed to be a left and it's a right, send it back. If it's supposed to be blue and it's green, send it back. Get on it. The last thing you need to have is have it. There are probably a top 5 list of things that get technicians to leave your shop, and that's in the top 5. If you don't have a process to checking your parts in, that is a top 5 reason for techs to leave. 100%.
Now, I see John Frazier's in the audience here. You know what today is, right?
It's Sunday.
It's John Frazier's birthday. That's what it is. Happy birthday, John.
What? John, oh, well, this is just shows, it continues to show the kind of leader that this man is. The man's in working, learning on his birthday at 8 o'clock Eastern on a Sunday night. There's a reason why he's advertising. If you're not making 3,000 hours a year, you need to come work for me as a CDJR technician. This is why. This is why.
So, I see. So we have we have tech turnover, but how much management turnover do we have? Do we have a lot of management turnover? Because it seems to me that you have the same manager and a lot of techs turning over, but nobody's looking at the manager or the leader.
So if I go back into the research I did to a talk I did actually at Tito's and T-shirts, I did some statistic analysis on Indeed, Glassdoor, and so forth. So the average technician is changing jobs every 18 to 24 months. 53% of your shop is changing jobs every 18 to 24 months. The average service manager is changing jobs every 32 months. So it's just shy of 3 years. So it's about 2.5 years, give or take. The average service manager is 46. This is I think I put about 3 different data points from 3 different places and put it in together in Excel, and I came up with my own bit. So it's roughly 46 years old, and it's roughly 2.5 years. So basically, a service manager can hire a technician day one. So their first day, they can hire a new technician, and they'll replace that technician. And just before that technician leaves, they'll leave themselves, give or take. 18 months, technician leaves. 18 months, technician and service manager leaves. So that's where your 80-20 rule really comes into play. Technician can change jobs 4 times before they find a decent leader.
Now, Robert, he mentioned here on the flat rate based on hours, the hourly goes up.
Sorry, say that again.
All right, says here, flat rate tiered system, 60 hours. For example, 40 hours, $28 an hour. And then after 50, it's $31 an hour. After 60, it's $35 an hour. So that, I guess that's a way to alleviate some of the stress too on the flat rate system.
It is. I'll give both sides of that coin, both the positive and the negative on that. Every technician is different, so that may not be something they want to hear. And something that the winners, those that winning is important in the comment section and watching this live, winning is important. Winning is very, very important. And I don't see the Titan in there, so I didn't drop the F-bomb. So, but not everybody has that same mentality. Your winning is not the same as their winning. So a technician that only wants to go in, clock in at 8, work as 8, clock out at 5, and make 8 hours doesn't care about a tiered flat rate system. They don't. They really, really, really don't. They don't care if they make 80%. They don't care if they make 90%. They don't care if they make 140%. They want to go in, they want to work, they want to go home. And I would say probably generally about 40% of those that I talk to don't care about working hard, as it were. Even though I've got it tattooed on me, they don't care about working hard. They want to go win, they want to work, and they want to leave. So that kind of tier system isn't going to work for them. Flat rate isn't going to work for them. Hourly will. They are happy to be held accountable for their time input. If they make mistakes, they're happy to be held accountable for that. And they're desiring to be rewarded or at least appreciated for their work and their effort. But if you've got, let's say you've got 20 techs in the shop and 10 of them are just like that, that's winning. That's winning. You got 2,000, 2,100 hours a year out of 10 techs out of your shop consistently. That's a win. That's a big win. And that means that you only have to deal with 50% that are either super high performers or super low performers. Means you can focus on, in all likelihood, probably 2 to 4 techs that just need training. And you get rid of the ones that don't want to train, don't want to learn, don't want to educate, or have bad attitudes. Because you can only educate a poor attitude for so long before it becomes toxic, and you get rid of the toxicity.
Now, when we talk about training, Frank brings up a good point here too, about cross-training. How many people cross-train their technicians with their service advisors? I'm a big proponent of that because, look, if we're going to have a team and we're all going to work together, then we really need to all understand each other's struggles, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, the advisor's blaming the tech for one thing or the tech's blaming the advisor for something else. There's no empathy on their part because they don't fully understand what that person's capacity or their job is. How often do you see cross-training going on? Do you see much of that happening? Zero. That's what I was afraid.
Goose egg.
So how can you put yourself in somebody else's shoes and not fly off the handle when something goes sideways if you don't understand what the other person does?
You can't. It's walking a mile in somebody else's shoes is one of the most important ingredients to a successful team. It's one of the most. You look at the Navy SEALs for a second. Like, they have specialties, but they live, eat, and breathe each other's air every single day, 24 hours a day, 100% of the time.
They have each other.
They know, and they have each other's. They literally have an SOP manual on how to be like SEAL Team 6. They have a written manual for many legal reasons because they're effectively employed by the government. They have a legal manual that they have to follow in just about every scenario. But as Jocko Willink says, discipline equals freedom. If they have processes in place, they can execute flawlessly. And if they need to vary, they have SOPs to deal with, to utilize, to vary the processes as the situation dictates. In a circumstance where nobody has a written SOP for what their job is or what someone else's job is, there's no way to even read about what the other person's job is. Forget about just doing it. Like, it's one thing to train a technician to write work orders on a Saturday morning. It's a complete another to have an SOP manual where you can give to every tech in your shop, say, this is what we give our advisors so that they can learn how to do what they do every day. This doesn't include on-the-job training and experience to deal with objection handling or a really upset customer or how to deal with long-term customer rapport building. But this tells you how we fundamentally lay out thought tracks, how we lay out how to create a work order, how to change a line on the work order, how to change the dollar value on the work order. So you could give to the whole tech team. I've never seen that. I have never seen. Now, I take it back. I take it back. I have seen when I was at Ben's. Ben's had it for every single person. However, I didn't get to see anybody else's job SOP. It was mine and mine alone. So the only person that knew them all was a service manager or those who wrote the SOPs. So that is a detriment, I think, to that process. But they had it written, and it was corporate Ben's. So I think to take into account, if you want to cross-train, at least have your SOPs written so that you can hand it. If you're not at least going to train them, at least hand it to them so they can read it.
Another stressor is what technicians spend on tools, right?
Oh, God.
That's a productivity killer too, because when the truck comes in, there's a couple of big ones. It seems like tech's off to the truck looking to get yet the latest gizmo, and these guys, it's like a mortgage, right? What you pay for a toolbox plus the tools in it, that's a major stress point.
So I don't think, and this is pure opinion, and I would love to poll this, and I think I should probably poll this to my techs. I don't think service managers truly, and not many of them will truly know what the actual payment is. The ones who care will. And I know there's a whole bunch in the chat comments that will know and will care, but most don't care. They know it's expensive, but they don't grasp what that means. Well, if you have a student loan from the government in both our countries, both Canada and US, it's the never, never plan. You could be paying for it for 30 years. It'll be a super low payment, $300-$400 a month, not a big deal. And you're paying it forever. And the interest is ridiculous. Well, the interest is ridiculous on the truck too. Like, it's really ridiculous interest rate on the trucks. And then you get almost ridiculous amounts of money on there. Like the box that I very nearly purchased just before I came off the bench the first time was $27,000. Like, in the course of my life, I've had almost 30 vehicles. I haven't spent $27,000 on vehicles yet. I'm almost 40. I haven't spent $30,000 of vehicles on myself yet. But the box that I was going to buy almost 12 years ago would have been almost 30 grand by the time taxes and delivery came into play. That is a number that many don't truly grasp. And that's the box.
Because it's so easy, right?
It's so easy. And you think, I've written about this and I've talked about this. Everybody thinks that getting a bigger box is a productivity hack. It's not. It's just it's just another expense. It's just
here's
another
how I look at it. Here's how I look at the toolbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
If dealers were to invest money into maybe provide the tools for the techs, how is that going to help the techs as far as retention, right? If I don't have to spend 30 grand and the store owns the tools, am I likely to get up and go somewhere else?
I don't know, because I have yet to find a shop that supplies both box and tools of like all of the tools required. Meaning you could walk in, let's say you're a 10-year experienced tech and you were working at a Ford store, and now you're walking into this brand new Ford facility. Now it's 30 bays. You're used to working in 10. It's 30 bays. It's got all the alignment equipment. It's got a super big special tool room. So you don't have to buy anything. But guess what? The only tech that doesn't already have $30,000 to $50,000 worth of tools is the one that's brand new.
that's my point. This isn't something it's just not like flipping the switch. If we incorporate that into the new ones coming in, it's not going to happen overnight. It's like EVs. People say, oh, gas engines are going to go. No matter how many EVs we sell tomorrow, the gas engines are going to be here for decades. They're not going away anytime soon. So if we know we have a problem with getting techs now, and we cultivate them and we make it easier for them to come in without having the huge expense, and we lay out a career path for them, and we kind of handcuff them by holding the tools. I mean, like I said, there's no one right answer to any of this, but we need to start. When you say, I don't know of any shop that does that, that's the point. What's wrong with somebody starting that now going forward?
I don't think there's anything wrong with them starting that. It would have to be like a brand new facility, brand new everything ready to rock for a whole bunch of people that don't need a lot of tools. The question, you then lead into other presumptuous questions. Like if you've got techs who've been in the business for 5 to 10 years and don't have $30,000 to $50,000 worth of tools that they want to use because it's their tools, they know where their tools are in the toolbox. They know how their tools work. They've got a 60 tooth ratchet set. They don't want to deal with your 24 tooth set, or they don't want to think that you've got cheap stuff. It's awfully hard to find somebody who's willing to make that sacrifice, because it is. You got to go in and you got to be like, I don't know about this. This is completely different. I don't know about this. It's trust. Like, do you trust a dealer that says, I'm going to provide you with everything? Well, that sounds too good to be true. And up to this point, for the most part, techs everywhere have been sold the line that we'll provide, we'll give you, we'll do this, we'll do this. We've been sold the line, hook, line, and sinker, and we've allowed it to happen. And you're going to see, I think if you see a facility trying to do that, they're not going to hire techs. They're only going to hire brand new people into the industry. Might they win? 100% they might win, especially if they have a good leader. But it's going to be a slow slog for them to get over and get trained, experienced technicians in the door. And it's going to be a hard sell because they've already got their tools. And what do you do if they want to use their own tools?
Well, no. What I'm talking about is to cultivate, to bring in new people, right? If I'm a new tech starting in the business, I'm not commanding the dollars yet. I'm just not. But yet I need the tools to do the work. So if I now say, oh, I don't care if no other dealer is doing this, I need to think about my store long-term vision. I have my A techs, my B techs. I've got the people that have all the tools, and that's great. And they're compensated accordingly. But now I'm cultivating a new breed of technician that I'm bringing in that doesn't have any of that. But I'm taking the time to lay out a career path. This is how long you're going to be a lube tech. This is what you're going to learn while you're doing that. And at this stage in the game, if you do X amount of schooling and get proficient at these core fundamentals that you need to be proficient at, then you get X dollars more. And here are the tools that we're providing. So here's the opportunity we're providing. I'm not paying you the same as the guy or the gal that's got the $40,000 rollaway, because I can't pay you that. But this is what I'm providing in exchange. I think that's a huge incentive for dealers to look at for long term.
But you have to take into what Marshall just said. Marshall summed it up perfectly. 100%. A new toolbox will get juniors in the door, but now they will depend on you for tools. That is setting up. It is not necessarily setting up for failure. It's a great way to get them started, but you've now set a precedent. If you give them, even if they get to earn it, they haven't paid with it with their own money. They haven't got to choose what those tools are. The other side of that coin, and this is, again, I'm being super negative right now, and I need to be, because you're being super positive. I want both sides. The negative side of that is you don't just need, if you're going to hire techs like that and going to supply them base tools, The other 18 techs in that 20 tech shop didn't get that. They spent the last 20 years earning all of those tools in their toolbox. If you haven't hired as a good leader, if you haven't hired a shop full of team players, you will have them leave, especially the top tier ones, because they're instantly saying that you're rewarding inequity. Sorry, inadequacy.
But the pay scale
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Actions speak louder than words. And no matter how big the paycheck is, the reward of someone who doesn't have any experience with that much earning is instantaneous resentment for most. We are human.
Marsha says you can pay them less forever. I think there's a happy medium somewhere that can be achieved. And I'm not saying bring somebody in, give them the tools, and just leave them on their own. I'm talking about ownership, taking responsibility, and making sure that they get trained. Not that they're there to work for free or get tools for free, but that they're actually learning and contributing as part of being able to use those tools.
Agreed.
I think,
and this, it comes back to leadership. It all comes back to leadership and the individual. If you have a shop full of individuals, not team players, you're going to have a problem. If you have a shop full of team players, it won't be a problem. But the only way that you're going to get a shop full of team players is if you have a good leader. So as ownership from top down, like the fish heads, fish sticks from the head. So if you have an owner that's not willing to give your fixed ops director or your service manager authoritative control over the shop, you've already lost.
Yeah,
you've already lost. Two, if you have a service manager in that position or fixed ops director in that position who has authoritative control and isn't hiring team players, you've lost. If you don't have someone being a perspective person on hiring for the service manager, you've lost. Because the last thing you need as a service manager is to say, that's a good hire, let's hire them, without any perspective. Having two people in a hiring office, in a hiring meeting with a technician, you must have. I've been to more interviews and more opportunities like that than you can count where it was just myself and a service manager. That is the worst possible thing as a service leader that you can do to yourself. You are losing opportunities. You are losing money because you are making poor hiring decisions because you're being impulsive and egotistical and arrogant that that's the best hire. You should have somebody on the shop floor, especially a non-production foreman who has no vested interest in this human being there with you. Is this a good hire? Are they a good fit for the team? I don't care if they're going to produce 3,000 hours this month or next month or this year. Are they going to help the team win? Because if you've got 20 techs, you don't need someone coming in there contaminating with cancer within 30 days. That's a really expensive mistake.
I want to get to a couple of things here. John Fraser says we do tool truck allowance for everyone based on productivity.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Here's the counter. Aren't the ones that aren't producing need the tools the most?
Yes and no.
If they aren't producing, are they not producing because they don't have the tool?
They may not.
I'm being devil's advocate on that one.
No, I love it. A good conversation is one where we can respectfully look at all sides of it, realizing that there's no one right answer, right? The person that's green that's coming in, I've seen eager people come in, learn quick, produce quick, and keep producing. I've seen other people come in, learn slow, not get anywhere, and guess what? Those people don't last. They don't make it. You know, Peter Smith has an interesting point here. He said there was a study that based on the dealer buying the tools, and the techs would accept $10 per hour less if the dealer bought the tools. So I don't know what the right number is, but I think that there's some equitable number that
per person
rewards the person that's got $40,000 worth of tools, and that rewards the person that's coming in that we want to grow into a quality technician that puts out a lot of work. You know, I think it's doable. And because we haven't done it, you know, I'm a firm believer. If that road doesn't exist, climb up on the bulldozer and make a new road.
I think anything is possible, and it's one of the things where fixed ops is such a great market and unique market for anyone willing to put in the time and really grow a business, because the sky's the limit. You find a good team and a good leader, it doesn't matter what brand it is. It doesn't matter what industry of repair, meaning planes, trains, automobiles, whatever the case may be. You find a good team of people that want to work and a good leader to lead them. There is no stopping them. John Fraser is the definition of this. Joe Chambers and Eric are definitions of this. There is no limit to what they can achieve with their teams, but it doesn't take much for that team to crumble under poor leadership. You talk about, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about tools, pay plans, anxiety, a foreman, drinking. It doesn't matter what we talk about in this hour. It doesn't matter. Poor leadership is poor leadership.
Period.
And if you think you're a great leader, I bet you dollars to pesos, you're the poor leader. Because poor leaders don't call themselves great leaders don't call themselves great leaders. Great leaders are humble. Their team calls them great leaders.
Bam. Wow. You know, I thought I changed the format to 30 minutes. That 30 minutes kind of came and went like real quick, and we could probably go on for hours, but we've come upon that time that we're at the end of our show. Josh, I can't thank you enough. This has been a great conversation. Based on the chat, I think everybody got a lot out of it as well. Sorry, I was not able to respond to all of them, because if I did, the show would probably go 2 hours, and we can't do that.
We could keep going. You're right.
Next week is NADA. I'm very excited about going, and I'm going to see clients there. I'm going to see LinkedIn connections. I'm going to see friends there. I'm going to see you there.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to that. I want to. I put this out the other day. For anybody that's going. Let me just put this out there real quickly. It's a short video offer. So watch this and I'll be right back. Live stream your product demo from NADA to a dealer audience on LinkedIn Live. That's right. You never even have to leave your booth to get exposure to all those dealers that were unable to attend in person, while not missing anyone at your booth. Retail customers want home delivery, mobile service. Why not you? We'll bring the mobile podcast right to your booth, where you can have your best presenter show your product live. Instead of just talking about your product, show them. Here's some interesting stats. Online video is expected to account for 82.5% of all web traffic in 2023. And some studies indicate as high as an 84% purchase intent after watching a brand's video. 80% of consumers want to see videos from your business. And 80% of consumers prefer video over text. So direct message, call, or email so we can get you on the calendar. 203-257-4727. See you in Dallas. Any closing words, Josh?
I think somebody asked where they can get the data that I reference. The Wrench Turners Wellness Survey is not yet public, so all the data is not yet public. I am keeping that back until there is enough of a pool for it to be effective for those who are interested. But if you are interested in what I have collected, I'm willing to share some very small amounts of that information as a report. If you're interested, please reach out to me through LinkedIn, Mr. Joshua Taylor on LinkedIn, or email joshua@justworkhard.com. Wrenchturners.online if you have more questions about what it is that I do, or check out the content on LinkedIn. I'm making something every single day, sometimes twice a day, 365 or 265 days a year, because it's just on work days for it specifically. And if you're going to NADA, I'm going. I'm looking forward to seeing as many of you folks there as humanly as I can, and try to connect with some technicians there as well.
If you're not connected to Joshua, connect with him, right? If you're not connected with me, connect with me. The better your network is, the greater the opportunities to help others and to get help from others when you least expect it. So I want to thank everybody that tuned in tonight, and I want to thank everybody that's going to watch it on the replay. I appreciate supporting the show. If you have someone that would benefit from the broadcast, by all means, share it with them. If you help one person, you've done a great thing. So have a safe and successful next week, and look forward to seeing many of you at NADA. Be sure to come over and say hi. I'd love to meet you if we're not already connected. And with that, enjoy the rest of your evening. Joshua, stay on when I turn off here for a second. You were going to say something?
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much to everybody that came out and commented. I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you. All right. We'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. No, actually before. We'll see you at NADA. But for those that aren't going, I'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Josh, stay on while we close.